Okay, so I had this whole video idea planned about how to use references for your art. Like, I was gonna make this super helpful tutorial, give you my whole workflow and all that. And then I ended up hating my painting. And it started out so strong. I even thought, oh my God, like maybe this could be the best piece I've ever made, or like maybe this could be my art book cover next. But by the end, I just didn't like it. I just hated it. But here's the thing. I actually learned more from this one failed piece than I have from my last 5 successful pieces. So instead of just doing a references tutorial, this video is gonna be part story time, part self-critique, and part why it's okay to move on when you hate your art. So let's rewind a little bit. I've been in this rut for months. I'd been focusing so much on content creation, launching my group Korea trip, making my free online course, which you can access by signing up to my newsletter, by the way, that my personal art was basically on pause. Then, last weekend, I told myself I need to sit down and just draw for like my own sanity. So I spent my Friday evening alone in the garden sketching just whatever was on my mind with, you know, just a marker. It was a cool experiment to abandon my pencil or any underlines, and I was just focusing on where I should put that next line. And I had a nice time with myself. It was actually very relaxing. And you know, I was on fire. The next day, I opened up my iPad and I made a study of this Winterhalter painting of Queen Elizabeth. I've wanted to make a master study painting for a while, so I focused on experimenting with brushes, making bold color choices, and stylization. And you can actually check out this whole process video on my Patreon. And then I made 2 pieces back to back that I was still so happy with. I was focusing on rendering and creating an interesting story and experimenting. This past year, my goal was to focus on more story-driven characters, not so much just like hot girl posing, which is what I do best. But my year has been busy and I've barely had time to do that. So I pulled up some cool references and poses and rendering styles, and I was in that rare groove where art feels like easy, you know? I was just flowing. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't worried about being perfect. I was just creating. It was awesome. And honestly, part of what keeps me creating is knowing that my work is mine. With AI spitting out everything now, it's more important than ever to really show that a human made it. And that's why today's video is sponsored by Proof I Did It. Right now, it's almost impossible for the average person to tell if a piece of art was made by a person or generated in seconds by AI. And that's the problem, because human-made art should hold more value, but only if people can actually see the proof. And that's where Proof I Did It comes in. It's the easiest way to verify your work as genuinely human-made. Here's how it works. You sign up, book a quick 10-minute verification call, and show a real person part of your creative process, whether that's making a small edit, painting a detail, or adjusting your file. That edit stays in the final piece, proving that you actually made it. Once you're verified, your art gets a verified human badge that you can display in your site, socials, or in an online collection. You can even group similar works together, so one verified piece helps prove the rest in that series are human-made too. It's quick, affordable, and it builds trust with clients, collectors, and fans, so your audience knows they're supporting you, not an algorithm. So head to proofididit.com and get your first verification credit for free. You know, show the world that you made it, because, well, you did. And then I started on this motorcycle piece. I found this image of this girl on a motorcycle, so I sketched her in. I was thinking, oh, should I make this look like a French graphic novel style? That's kind of cool. That's where it started off as. And then I decided I wanted to push myself. I didn't just want another cool portrait or a nice pose. I wanted a story. I wanted character design. I wanted a scene with environment and mood and lighting. I wanted a piece that would make people ask, who is this character? What's going on here? So then after the sketch, I found some cool lighting scenarios that I can pull from, like a dusk sunset moment. It's not a color scheme that I'm particularly strong at, but my motivation is high at this point and I'm gonna figure it out. I swear, blocking in a piece is 80% of the work. Once I have the shapes, the pose, the lighting direction, the rest is just making it look pretty. And at this stage, it looked pretty cool. I was actually impressed with what I'd done. With just analyzing how the light in these images work, I can superimpose that lighting onto my scenario. I also pulled up some of Max Greg's pieces that have kind of a similar lighting scenario so I can analyze and learn from. Finding some blue ambient light, some strong room light, and a little bit of warm bounce light. So I took a break for the rest of the day because I was really proud of what I created. Maybe this piece will be the next cover of my art book. And then my downfall, I thought, maybe I can make a video about how I created this piece from references. And that was a mistake. I came back the next day with a new mindset, a worse mindset. Now I was thinking, oh my God, this is work. Now it's not fun anymore. So I tried to keep going, but everything was just fighting me. First problem, Procreate's limitations. I kept hitting the layer limit. I couldn't group clipping masks together. There was no adjustment layers. And every few minutes, I was just merging layers and regretting it, trying to make up space. And the hair, I restarted the hair like 3 times. I couldn't figure out how I wanted to paint it. I pulled up so many references from Max Grech. How does he make his hair so stylized and simplified? Is it my brushes? Why does it look so rough? The hair was the first part I was truly rendering, so the rest of the piece was gonna match this style, but I couldn't even lock down the style, you know? So eventually I said, okay, I'll just move this to Photoshop and finish it there. But by the time I got it in Photoshop, the next week, my momentum was gone. Instead of feeling excited, I was just frustrated. So I made a decision. I wasn't gonna start over. I'd work with what I have and see how far I can take it. And this is when I went full self-critique mode. You know, I have a little checklist for figuring out why a piece isn't working. Black and white values. I turned it in grayscale to check the contrast. The character was so dark. And Procreate doesn't have like an easy way to check values, so I just like never checked my values until I brought it to Photoshop. So I did a little bit of tweaks to help with the lighting, like brightening up the space behind the motorcycle so it would pop a little bit more. But then I run into the issue of lighting logic. The legs and the motorcycle weren't matching the lighting scenario in the background. It just didn't make sense. The wheel should be darker and the legs should be lighter. Like the wheels in shadow and the boots would be getting the bounce light, but the back leg is fully merged because I hit the layer limit on Procreate. So, you know, I could either start over, but I don't want to do that. So in the very end, like when I stopped caring about it, I just scratched over and I ended up fixing it a little bit. I don't know, it kind of helps, not really. Color choices. Everything was just so pink. There was no color variation. There was no like chill moment for the colors. Everything was so bright and vibrant, and the sky and the ground are the same color. So I changed the sky to a little bit more blue, and I lowered the saturation in the ground. It helps a tiny bit, not too much. The focal point. The focal point is the face and the composition is leading our eye there, okay, but the colors and the values aren't really guiding the eye in the way that I want. Silhouette. All right, if anything, my silhouette is strong. Probably because the silhouette's like entirely blacked out. Textures. There's way too many textures. There's no breathing room. I tried to soften some of the ground textures and I could have put more time and effort into the landscape, but would really require me like sitting down and focusing on this piece like a background painting. Something that I just didn't have it in me to do. I've made lots of environmental landscape studies, but they take a long time since I'm a character artist first. So this would require me to change my thinking and like do this for like an hour, but I just didn't have it in me. Also, in terms of texturing, the character was just so over-rendered and there was no fixing that unless I wanted to simplify it. Composition. I thought about expanding the canvas for breathing room, but it doesn't just mean like painting the extended parts of the canvas. It really means like reconsidering the background composition because there's all this new space, like the shrubs would have to move, and I'm just not doing that. At this point, I even tried adding a big star, like a graphic star over the piece, just like a distraction. I knew I shouldn't have, there's no point of it, but I did. So at this point, I let go of the idea of this piece having to be amazing, and I loosely applied all these fixes. So, you know, when you start to let go of that perfectionism, you can open yourself up to that change. So here's where the lesson goes, right? I was holding this piece to such a high expectation because I thought it was going to be like my best piece of right now, right? But here's the truth that I learned over doing art over the years. The longer you force a piece that stopped flowing, the less likely it is to get better. And the more likely you are to burn yourself out. We tend to think, oh, more time is better art. But in reality, art has the sweet spot of momentum. So when you pass that point, your clarity stops to drop and you stop making bold choices and you start tinkering. And tinkering rarely fixes the real problems. It's just putting lipstick on a pig. And in all my years of doing art, I've learned that it's way better to move on than keep grinding away at something that's no longer bringing you joy. If it's not for a client, it's not for a big project, it's not something that I need to finish right now, then why am I breaking my back over it? So when I stepped back, I could see the issues clearly. The value structure was weak. Without a strong black and white foundation, no amount of rendering is going to save it. The saturation was competing everywhere. Colors were loud, but they weren't really in harmony. The lighting didn't have a consistent logic. My character in the background were lit like they were in different scenes. Too much rendering. When every inch of the painting is equally detailed, your eye gets lost. No breathing room in the composition. It felt very claustrophobic. Here's the thing. I could fix all of these. I've done it before, but that means like hours or maybe days of repainting, fighting against my own loss of excitement. And that's where the real value of experience comes in, knowing when to stop. So instead of endlessly like patching this one up, I'm taking what it taught me and I'm moving on. Next time, I'll lock in my values early and constantly check in black and white. I'll commit to a single light logic and I'll stick to it, probably by using better references where there's an actual object in the lighting scenario. I'll leave parts intentionally loose to give the focal point more room to breathe. And I'll simplify my palette so the colors are supporting the story and not competing with it. So here's my takeaway that I want you to remember. You don't have to love every piece that you make. In fact, you shouldn't. Because the pieces that you don't like are often the ones that teach you the most. So if you want to grow quickly, aim to make 100 imperfect drawings instead of one perfect one. So next time that you hate your art, don't delete it, like analyze it, learn from it, and then let it go and move on to your next piece. And that's it from me. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to sign up for my free painting crash course by signing up for my newsletter. That's crazy. And I'll see you next time. Bye.